What's that got to do with climate change?
Cows.
What about cows?
Cow farts.
Cow farts. We're talking methane. Belches. You're leaving out belches too. Cow belches are just as bad as cow farts. Anyway, so all of this stuff emits a lot of greenhouse gases. If you're going to raise cattle, it takes a lot of water. It takes a lot of nutrients to raise the corn or whatever it is you're feeding them. So one thing you can do to reduce your carbon emissions is eat lower on that pyramid and eat more vegetables and fruits. Do you have to become a vegan? No, I'm not, but if you wish to do it, you can take a shot at it. But what you can do is eat less, especially beef and lamb are very high. It takes a lot of carbon to raise those two, from what I understand. Chicken, not as much, so maybe have more chicken and fewer steaks. Anything else you're doing?
Solar panels,
Solar panels. What kind do you have?
big ones.
Big solar, they're photovoltaics, right? So she's getting electric energy from the sun. Now, this planet is solar powered. All of our energy comes from the sun, basically, whether it's coal, which is plant matter, which was grown because of the sun and then decomposed, or solar, or any other kind of power. Generally, it comes from the sun. So I don't have those. I've got the hydronic. I've got hydronic heat in my house, and that helps with my heating. So there are a lot of things you can do. You can insulate your house. That would help. Instead of warming the entire county when you're in wintertime, just warm your house. That would be good. Have a smaller place. Buy less stuff. All those things will lower your carbon footprint. If we all do all those things, will that solve the problem? Shaking her head. No, not for her. Does that mean it's unnecessary? No. They're necessary. They're not sufficient, though. They're necessary. We have to do that kind of stuff. But it's not going to be enough to deal with the size of the problem that we're facing. We have to do more than just that. So that's why I'm here, is to talk to you about what we can do. I am, she mentioned I'm the co-coordinator for the state of Wisconsin of Citizens Climate Lobby. What she didn't mention is I'm a volunteer. I'm not a paid staff person. I'm also the head of our local chapter in Stevens Point of Citizens Climate Lobby as a volunteer. I became a full-time volunteer after I retired from the University of Wisconsin Stevens Point. Why? It's that important. It is that important that we deal with this. Citizens Climate Lobby, nonpartisan organization. We're a nonprofit, but we're also nonpartisan. We don't support Republicans or Democrats, individual candidates. One of our members runs for office, we can't support him. What we support is finding a solution to the greatest problem the human race has ever faced: climate change. We're a grassroots organization too, by the way. Each individual chapter runs itself. And I know that the chapter in Oshkosh is very well run because it's run by her. Shannon Davis-Foust is the leader of that chapter. And it's a good chapter. So we have 19 other chapters around the state of Wisconsin. It was founded a little over 10 years ago. It's got over 100,000 supporters here in the United States, 42 chapters in the U.S. That's wrong. That's 420 something. 422 chapters. There's the 2 left out there. 422 chapters in the United States, of which 20 are in Wisconsin. Our goal is to pass a carbon fee and dividend bill ASAP, as soon as possible. It is just by luck that this has happened. But yesterday, a carbon fee and dividend bill was introduced in Congress. And it wasn't just a carbon fee and dividend bill. They've been introduced before. This was a bipartisan carbon fee and dividend bill. Had 5 sponsors, 2 Republicans, 3 Democrats. What was the last time that happened? Well, before I was involved in Citizens Climate Lobby, I can tell you that much. It's been about 10 years since there was a bill like that. This is the first one. And it's something we had been pushing for, Citizens Climate Lobby have been pushing for a long time. I'll tell you more about that bill in a few minutes. This is a bunch of people in Washington talking to a senator at the moment. So our mission is create the political will for a livable world. Now, the fact of the matter is politicians don't do that. They don't create political will, they respond to it. It's up to you and me to create the political will, to make sure that our members of Congress know we want to keep this a livable world. So that's what our organization is about, conveying that message to members of Congress. We also try to empower individuals. When I had joined Citizens Climate Lobby, I had never in my life met with a member of Congress. I had never in my life written a letter to a member of Congress. I had written some nasty letters to the editor about members of Congress that I didn't like. And then those are letters that I wish I could now pull back, a little late. But I had never written a letter to the editor about climate change. I have written dozens since joining Citizens Climate Lobby. I have been in power. I step outside my comfort zone. It wasn't comfortable for me to meet these important people and talk to them, and write to them and that kind of stuff. But I stepped outside my comfort zone because it's that important. It's important that we do this kind of stuff. We're in a democracy. Our political leaders are supposed to be following our directions. We have to make sure they know what our directions are. Philosophy is we're not against things. We are for a solution. We don't hate members of Congress. We're very fond of members of Congress. When we work with members of Congress, meet with them, meet with their aides, one of the first things we say to them is thank you for your service to our nation. Thank you for introducing this bill, which was a good bill. And we express our admiration to them. Why? Because we're trying to set up relationships. We can't buy ourselves into a solution for climate change. The oil, gas, and coal companies are spending tens of millions of dollars. For one thing, they pay for lobbyists in Washington. There are 4 lobbyists from the fossil fuel industry for every member of Congress. Every member of Congress. There are 4 fossil fuel lobbyists. We can't outspend them. But what we can do is set up human relationships with them based on respect. When was the last time you had a relationship, a good, productive relationship with somebody you didn't respect? It is not possible. So we try to indicate to members of Congress, we respect you, we value you. Now, here's why we urge you to take these steps, which will be so important to your constituents and to you and to your 3 children and your grandchildren and everybody else. We are polite. Had a situation in Congress where one of our people was meeting with a member of Congress, actually half a dozen of our people, meeting with the aides for a member of Congress who was not there, couldn't be there tonight. And halfway through the meeting, the member of Congress came in. And he said, I was meeting with some people from a different environmental organization, and they were shouting at me. I don't like being shouted at, so I thought I'd come here because I know you won't shout at me. And we won't. We will treat them with respect. We begin by listening to them, and then we try to persuade them to our position. Oh, it also says we are very persistent, and we are. We've been at this over 10 years, and we're going to keep at this until we solve this problem. We've now got a bill introduced. Does that mean the problem is solved? Heck no. It's not going to be voted on in this session. It will have to be reintroduced next session, and it will be. But it has to pass. And once it's passed, it has to be passed by the Senate. And once that's happened, it's got to be signed by the President. So we have a long road to hoe, and we know that, a road to hoe. So we seek and develop long-term personal relationships with elected officials and their staff. Method is focus on solutions. Concentrate on that. We know what to do. Instilled hope, especially up until yesterday, commodity in short supply with a lot of our members. 10 years we've been working on this, 11 actually. And we try to educate ourselves and our fellow constituents about the nature of climate change. That's why I'm here. That's why I drove over here from Stevens Point today, to educate my fellow constituents about this, see if I can get your help. This is a picture of me. I don't know if you can make me out. I'm over on the right there, kind of midway back on the right. That's a picture of me and 1,400 of my closest friends. All of these are members of Citizens Climate Lobby from all over the nation. This was in Washington in 2017, in June. By the way, these 1,400 people are all in Washington, D.C. for 2 or 3 days on their own dime. Nobody paid for our transportation or our lodging or anything else. We paid to go here so that we could meet with our members of Congress. We each met with about 3 different members of Congress, talked with them, also had a lot of training about how to do what we need to do. I also meet with members of Congress here in the state of Wisconsin. I go to their offices with other people and we discuss climate change issues. We write letters. For members of Congress, we write letters to the editor. We write guest editorials, like some people call them op-eds. We write columns in newspapers. We meet with editorial boards, try to encourage them to write an editorial supporting climate change action. We get on the radio when we can. We get on TV when we can. We use social media as much as we can. All designed to get the word out to people. This is an important issue. This is why it's important. This is what the consequences are going to be. We also have outreach events. And congratulations, you're in an outreach event with colleagues. Kind of a dumb name, but it's what they came up with. Here's a little graphic again, meeting with a member of Congress. Over on the left, it shows how many of those meetings we had in 2010 and 2011, 2012, up through 2017. As you can see, it went from 106 meetings with members of Congress up to 1,662. And it will probably be more than that this year. At the same time, we wrote about 74,000 personal letters to members of Congress. Try to keep track of these, but don't get all of them recorded, I'm sure, but nonetheless wrote a lot of letters to members of Congress about climate change issues. Some of the things we do. What are we pushing? Carbon fee and dividend. I've got 15 minutes to talk with you about carbon fee and dividend. How does it work? What's the problem? We got too much carbon in our atmosphere. What does Congress do in order to get people to stop doing things Congress wants them to stop doing? Let's take, smoking cigarettes. What can Congress do to stop people from smoking cigarettes? Taxes. Suddenly, cigarettes become real expensive, and people are less likely to buy them. Right? When I was your age, cigarettes cost 35 cents a pack. Now, I don't smoke, but I'm going to make a guess. They cost more than 35 cents. I'm going to make a guess, what, $8 a pack, maybe? So suddenly cigarettes got real expensive. Why? Put a tax on it. It's called a Pigovian tax, after an English economist named Arthur Pigou. And what it is a tax designed to discourage people from doing things government doesn't want them to do. What's the problem with cigarettes? What it costs to make that cigarette and sell it to you is not the real cost of the cigarette. There are additional costs. When you get lung cancer, that's a cost to the whole society because you can't work. When you die early, and it's the cost of the entire society because you're not in the workforce. You're polluting the atmosphere when you're exhaling. That's the cost of the whole society. So what the tax on cigarettes has done is it has encouraged people to stop smoking. We want people to stop emitting so much carbon. So what we want to do is make it expensive. So the way this works is, at the extraction point, whether that's the wellhead or the coal mine or the border where we're importing fossil fuels, whoever's doing that extracting or importing will pay for whatever, let's take coal, whatever fossil fuel it might be, they're going to pay $15 per ton for the carbon dioxide that fuel is going to emit when it is burned. They're going to burn the coal. And when they do, it's going to emit carbon for each ton it will emit. The coal company pays the federal government $15 for the first year. Now, if that's all this was about, I would not be a member of Citizens Climate Lobby. Government can use that money for whatever it wants. We got ourselves a problem. They could use it for something I don't want them to use it for. But that's not what happens. Whoops, I'm going to back it up and try it this way. There's a 100% refund of that money to U.S. households, minus whatever it costs for the government to get those checks to you. How often do they get the checks to you? Each month. They're going to send you a check based on how much coal, oil, and gas have been taken out of the earth or imported into our country. They will send every U.S. household a certain amount of money. By the way, it's the same amount of money. You get the same amount of money as I get, as Bill Gates gets, anybody gets, same amount of refund. 1 unit per adult. Got 2 adults and a couple kids in the family, they get 3 units. Kids count as half a person. I don't know why. So they would get 3 units for a household of 4. The money comes to the households. By the way, under the new bill that's been introduced in Congress, that refund starts before the carbon fee and dividend goes into effect. Because they want to assure the American public that that money is going to go through. People will get it. So even before they acquire it, they're going to send out the first check to American households. I discovered that last night in a meeting that we had about this bill. So, okay, what happens with the oil companies, the gas companies? They make coal, oil, and gas real expensive. That's what? Why? To earn back the extra money they have to pay to the federal government. So instead of it costing, $3, $4 for a gallon of gas, it's going to cost $5, then maybe $6, then maybe $7, maybe $8. Thing you have to know is, this isn't only about gasoline for your car. It's about the shirts you're wearing at the moment. Because that was made with fossil fuels. And your shoes. And by the way, those chairs you're sitting in, fossil fuels. So everything you buy that's made with fossil fuels suddenly becomes more expensive. Yeah, but you're getting all this money back to the federal government. And for most Americans, that will be enough, or more than enough, to reimburse you for the higher costs of the things you're buying. Does that make sense? More than enough for your outlay. That's why I'm the Citizens Climate Lobby. Because you know who wins big in this? The poorest people in the country. Poorest people. Why? Because they're walking to work. They can't afford the bike, let alone the car. They live in a little tiny apartment. What does it take to heat that? About nothing. So their outlay for fossil fuels is very low, and yet they're getting the same amount of money as Bill Gates is getting. Who loses in this? Bill Gates. Why? Because he's got 17 cars, 3 yachts, 2 planes, all these properties. He is expending a lot on fossil fuels. So he's going to have to pay a lot. But of course, Bill Gates can put up a solar collector on his roof. He can afford it, so he can cut his costs, as can all of us. And as a matter of fact, that's exactly what's going to happen. That's why we're doing this. People will start putting up solar collectors. They're going to put up windmills. They're going to start tapping more into geothermal, into tidal power, maybe even nuclear power. Am I in love with nuclear power? Nope. The bill doesn't say anything about nuclear power. Citizens Climate Lobby doesn't endorse nuclear power. But I'll tell you one thing about nuclear power. It doesn't emit a lot of carbon. It emits other things that we don't like, but not carbon. So anyway, people will start doing investment in solar power, renewable energy of various kinds, and that will grow. Coal, oil, and gas are going to shrink and disappear. Coal has almost disappeared already, by the way. It's not going anyplace. There are more and more companies going out of business. Can't compete with gas at the moment. So, okay, things get more expensive, and as a result of that, people start buying things made with non-fossil fuels, and those are cheap. Advantages of carbon fee and dividend. It's fast. You can put it into a place immediately. A few months, bingo. It's cheap. Doesn't cost much to administer this. You just got to write checks. That's it. It's scalable. By the way, will the oil and gas and coal companies be honest in reporting this stuff? Yeah, they will. How much they've mined or drilled for. Yeah, they will because they're doing it already. There are records they have to keep currently for taxes about what they're producing. So they will be doing it accurately and honestly. Simple, easy to understand, not complex. There are other ways of dealing with carbon dioxide, far more complex. Scalable, can start small, $15 the first year. But the second year, $25 a ton. Third year, that would be $35. Next year, $45. That's under the bill that's currently in Congress. $45, then $55, then $65, then $75. Eventually, it's going to be $100 to emit a ton of carbon. So that's a lot to pay. So people will not be, oh, by the way, how much fuel can you buy? Are we going to regulate you? We're going to stop you from buying fuel? Heck no, you can buy as much carbon-based fuels as you want for $100 a ton of emissions. But it's up to you. We're not limiting how much you can get, but it's going to be kind of expensive. Predictable. This is something that people who are in business really find important. They want to be able to see where things are, what's going to be in 5 years from now, what's it going to cost? How about 10 years? All going to be laid out. And international. Other countries are going to buy in on this as well. No EPA regulations are necessary to have this happen. Other EPA regulations are necessary. I'm not saying we should eliminate all EPA regulation. But for this, none are necessary. 10 years, clean energy is cheaper than carbon-based energy. This is false. It's probably going to be 5 years. But certainly 10, you bet. Some parts of the U.S. right now, renewable energy, windmills, solar collectors are cheaper than buying things off the grid. By the way, where do we get our energy in Wisconsin? Our electric energy comes from, is it nuclear? Are some nuclear power plants? Anybody? It's coal. What is the most polluting of all the fossil fuels? It's coal. So I'm going to skip the border tax adjustments, but they've worked out ways that we can ship things to other countries without being disadvantaged. They make arrangements to have a tariff at the border. I'm not going to get into that. They tried it in British Columbia, and people said you can do it, but it's going to be real expensive, and people are going to hate it, but you can do this. And it turned out, no, people loved it. Why? They had more money in their pockets. And at the same time, they had more jobs. More jobs? We're putting coal miners out of work and get more jobs? How can that be? There aren't very many coal miners. By the way, there aren't many people working on oil rigs either. It doesn't take a lot. I don't know if you've ever driven through Southwest, you go through, there are these mules, I think they call them there. There's these things going like this in the fields. There are like 100 of them in a field, all just going up and down, real slow. What are they doing? Pumping oil. There are a lot of people around there? No people around there. When they start out, to drill it, you got to take some people. But after they've got it drilled, no people. Coal industry, aren't there a lot of people with picks digging that coal out and putting in those big buckets? Nope. What's digging coal today? Robots. What are they controlled by? Computers. Very few people in the coal industry. Does that mean we should ignore them? No. If we make this transition, there ought to be money allocated to help people in fossil fuels make the transition, learn other jobs. It takes a lot of people to make a solar collector, to install a solar collector, to repair a solar collector. That takes a lot of people. As a matter of fact, there are more people in the renewable energy field right now than there are in coal and oil. So, yeah, it will improve the job, just as it did in British Columbia. 3 things just happened, and I have a grand total of 5 minutes to tell you about them. First one is the IPCC report on global warming of 1.5 degrees Celsius.
You have 15 more minutes.
Oh, I have 15 more. Thank you so much.
13.
This happened last time, too. I'm used to ending at the hour. Okay, IPCC report. What the heck is the IPCC? It is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Who runs it? The United Nations. And this report came out when? This report came out, I believe it was October 8th. And yeah, October 8th. It's a 700-page report if you want to sit down and read it, 700 pages. It was written by 91 scientists from all over the world.